Welcome to the Imperfect and Abundant podcast. I'm your host, Mercedes Maidana. In this space, I will be sharing tools for you to manifest abundance in your life through inner work, inner healing, money mindset, spirituality, and lots of taking action. This is a space for you to dream big, see what's possible for you, and create your rich life. I know that you're capable of living to your fullest potential, sharing your gifts with the world and making lots of money doing what you love. In this space, we will discover together ways in which you can feel aligned, tap into abundance, feel happy, and most importantly, feel fulfilled. Let's dive into today's episode. Welcome. So today we have a treat. We have a very special guest, Jennifer Rogers Markwell. Jennifer is an Emmy-nominated journalist, and she's the president and a financial advisor at, can you remind me, Platinum Wealth Management?
Platinum Wealth Management, yes.
Great. So Jennifer knows a thing or two about money, finances, investing, and I would like to know all the things that she knows, but we see what we can learn in these minutes. So let's just dive in. Welcome, Jennifer. How are you doing today?
Oh, good. Thank you so much for having me. I was very much looking forward to this.
Great. I'm very excited to be having this conversation. You know, in our Rich Mermaids world, we talk about money, we work around money and our stories and how we grew up around money. And, you know, I keep discovering over and over again that we bring patterns from our childhood that they may even be unconscious, and how they reflect on our daily finances as an adult. So I want to ask you a little bit about something that you call money memories that I heard you talk about, but I would like to know more about what do you mean with money memories, and also how did you discover that term, or how did you get to that?
Yeah, so money memories came up for me quite a bit working in the industry, being a financial advisor. So we have an initial meeting with either, clients or people that we're prospectively going to be working with, and it's more of like a discovery meeting. And that's where you kind of have that opportunity to find out why people do what they do, and really the back reasoning, the psychology behind it. And I found the common thread with, clients or people that we're about to work with is what's called the money memory. And it's a memory that you either have from growing up or from childhood or from teenage years that really helped mold your relationship to money as an adult. So for example, and I talk about that in my podcast as well. So for example, there's some people that grew up with, parents maybe not having a lot of money, growing up in, relatively poor conditions. And so for them, they remember brothers and sisters all living in one room and being in a very small space for that family. And that's their money memory. So as they grow to be an adult, they always go back to that mindset of that's what it was like, and that's how it is. So other folks, for example, one gentleman I spoke with, his money memory was having a lemonade stand when he was a young man, right? And this was not to date him, but that was probably 40 plus years ago. So he had a lemonade stand and he charged $5 a cup for lemonade 40 years ago, which if you think back on $5, that's not a cheap cup of lemonade, right? 40 years ago. Anyhow, he said he knew his worth. So he said, I knew my worth. I would give a song and a dance, and I'd give the good lemonade. He's like, I'd squeeze it myself. I'd put good sugar in. He's like, I knew my value even then. So really interesting to hear such different stories from different people. And I feel like this is where it resonates with everyone, whether you're polka dotted, rainbow striped, whatever, right? Whatever walk of life you are, you have a money memory that helped mold your relationship to money as an adult. And whether that story now still serves you, or if you change the narrative to something that will better serve you now or better to where you want to be, that's obviously up to you and your personal situation. But there was always a money story that evolved you to where you're at now.
Absolutely. How interesting, right? And I love that entrepreneur mindset of knowing his value, but also adding extra value to something as simple as a lemonade. So it's incredible. And I was just curious. I'm sure you see people from all walks of life, all different financial situations and backgrounds. And how do you see, for example, that it affects let's take the scenario of somebody that grew up in a very poor household, very limited, with a lot of scarcity. We cannot generalize. We all make different paths, but what do you usually see as maybe some kind of mindset obstacle when they come to you or when they work with you, that you maybe find it different from somebody that didn't go through those situations?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And I feel like that's really near and dear to my heart. So I grew up with my grandparents, and they, again, blue collar, worked really hard for what they have. They didn't have a lot, but they worked really hard for what they had by all means. So I grew up in kind of their generation of looking at things a little bit differently. What I find from others that maybe grow up in a place of scarcity, or, parents worked really hard to get food on the table, there's a mindset that comes along with that is, am I good enough to have a financial advisor to work with me? Will I ever have enough money to have a financial advisor work with me? And that's been something that I've heard a lot along the way too. And it's been really eye-opening to me, because I feel like whether you have $1 or you have $1 million, right? You worked hard for that money. And for you to get to that point of you having, $1 million or whatever your goal is down the road, right? You need help to be able to get there potentially. And for me and my team, like, we want to sing from the rooftops that everyone has and deserves a seat at the table when it comes to the talk about their finances. That's so important. So no matter where you're coming from, whether it be a place of, this is all I have to invest and I want to be able to, figure it out and I need help, you're worthy of having someone help you and get you on that right track based on what your goals are. So I would say that's probably a very similar conversation I have with folks is, do I even have enough? Would you even be willing to work with me? Are you even willing to have a conversation with me? And that breaks my heart, because again, I feel like everyone deserves a seat at the table for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, the word that came up for me was you're worthy, and you just said it. How important to get to show people that they can be what they want to be and become, and they can change their stories. And as you speak, I'm thinking of my own money story, and I have many things to untangle in this onion, and I feel like I'm gonna keep learning about it as I keep looking at my journey. And it's funny, when I actually have some success, all kinds of triggers come. When things are good, I start to panic. Uh, I start to want to be better. So I can see how my patterns of trying to please daddy or whatever it is in my childhood, they show up. Mostly when money shows up, it's like all these things, all the bells start ringing, and yeah, well, that was just a thought that I was thinking how it affects me. And I grew up in a household where there was sometimes money, and then there was no money because my father had a drinking problem. So there was work, there was no work, and my mother was a teacher, so she couldn't bring that much. And I really don't know how it was for them as adults, but for me as a child, from where I was, there was this kind of sense of roller coaster ride of not being really safe, of maybe we have, maybe we don't, or yeah, we're going on this holiday and then no, it's canceled, we're not going. And the promises that never arrive, or the toy, the Barbie you want, and the little things or the big things, and even with food in the table, and the embarrassment of having like a neighbor bringing food to us, and that taking it as something shameful, which is not, but whatever's happening in my household, like that's how it was received. And I'm thinking of this, and I'm sharing this, that is very private, I don't really talk about this, just to dissect a little bit, if you can help me to see how this money story works out, in regards to that roller coaster ride, and to redirect that. And for example, the way I redirected it as an adult, it was, I created safety,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm way on the side of safety. Like, you don't come and talk to me about some crazy stock or something. I'm like, no. And I know eventually I'm gonna have to relax and diversify, and learn how to let go and trust. And maybe, yes, you lose some, you gain some. But I want to ask you if you have encountered maybe people similar to my case, where the ups and downs of growing up without money, and how does it affect them, and how can we change, into a more healthy money story.
Yeah, yes, that is common, right? I feel like seeing whatever you witness growing up does have an impact of how you navigate things. I think what you're doing with like Rich Mermaids, right, of being able to help change that mindset, it's just a mindset change ultimately. It's getting comfortable, right? And that's the key word, feeling safe,
Yeah.
and then realizing that you can do whatever you want to do from there. But it's getting that initial mindset of knowing that you're okay and knowing that you're okay with moving forward. And I think this is where, like with coaching, right? You want to have somebody coach you to get you to the next step. Same thing with finance. You want to get somebody who's meeting you where you're at and helping you achieve your financial goals, because that's one of the things. Can you do it by yourself? Sure, some people can, but a lot of people can't because there's that psychology behind it. And when you're listening to your head and you're hearing stories from child or whatever that are coming back up in, you want to be able to have somebody to say, hey, here's where I'm at. Here's what I'm thinking. Does this make sense? Does this help me reach my goal out here? Because if it doesn't, is that really serving you? And I think that's where, for me, like coming in as a financial advisor can make good sense. Same thing for people sitting down with you on the coaching side of things, right? If they don't have you holding their hand to help them get to the next level to see that, then how are they going to get there? Could they do it by themselves? Maybe. But is it more successful to have somebody rally around you and be on your team to support you, to help lift you along the way? Yes, absolutely.
Yes. And I imagine that you instill confidence in your clients, or how is that journey to start switching the mindset?
Everybody's different. Everybody's situation's different. Everybody's story's different. So I think with some folks, it's, starting out with baby steps and saying, okay, what are your goals? Let's line those out. Let's figure out when you want to retire. Or are you saving for a house? Are you saving for kids for college? I mean, there's a number of different goals financially that you could have. And let's line them up. Let's have separate buckets for each one of those. And let's talk through how we get there to be able to reach those goals. Some people, again, are in kind of the 101 realm where they're like, I just want to get my feet wet. I want to learn a little bit as I'm going, and that's fine. But again, it's really going back to what your goals are and why we do what we do so you can reach your goals.
That's fantastic. It's funny that you mentioned the baby steps, because at the Rich Mermaids, we're all about baby steps for everything that we do there. It's about the next baby step that is ahead. Because, even as I was listening to you, I was thinking how I usually think of investing, and it's like something big. So it's so overwhelming that I stop. And you reminded me, no, we do baby steps into the next immediate goal or down the line goal that needs to be done.
Yep.
So how important is that to break that dinosaur that is ginormous, break it down into what's ahead, what's really important, what can we do right now with what we have, where we're at.
It's huge because I feel like with finance too, and I've shared this with you offline. I mean, I got into this industry for the reasons of trying to understand finance, right? My grandparents raised me, like I shared, they were mom and dad. And when my grandpa passed, we found ourselves, obviously mourning the loss of him, but he was like the finance guy in our family, right? So he was the guy. Whereas, they were old school. I mean, they were depression kids. So the male generally took kind of the role of the finance person in the household, and the wife had many other roles that were just as important by all means. But when we lost my grandpa, we found ourselves trying to do everything, right? And they didn't have a lot, but what they had was spread around everywhere. So we found ourselves going into different institutions and banks and meeting with different advisors, and never had that warm fuzzy feeling that anyone cared or wanted to do what was in my grandma's best interest. And truly, it was like a foreign language. And so she said, if we're going through this, imagine how many other women are going through this too. And at that point, I was like, okay, I'll learn everything I can. And here I am. I mean, I worked in TV for decades, right? Emmy nominated. I didn't expect to have a transition into finance from that, but I'm super grateful to be on the path that I've been on the last 15 years to really try to make sense of finance, because it is a foreign language. And unless you have somebody, in your corner trying to help you navigate it, it can be really confusing and overwhelming for sure.
Absolutely. And since we're talking about somebody that, like your grandma, like she was left upside down, and where does she start? How does she put it together? So, and I'm sorry you've been through that hardship, and it's incredible to see how you alchemized it and the service that you're doing for others. And it's very touching to hear
Yeah,
that.
I'm again, out of a tragedy came a blessing, right? So for me, I feel like I'm able to help people make sense of investing along the way. Was it a journey I thought I'd be on? No, not at all. Not at all. But here I am, and I feel like I'm making an impact. I'm doing my best to help others and to lift others along the way.
Yes. And how important is, when we show up to a place of service because of a personal story, I feel that infuses the work in a different way. There's a mission there. How inspiring is to hear you, and maybe somebody on the other side is listening to this, and maybe it's not with investing on finances, but something else that touch their family, touch their hearts, and they say, you know what, I'm gonna go for this. I'm gonna make a difference. See how I can make it. Maybe it's a small difference, but a difference in one person's life, in one family, is a huge difference. It's absolutely worth it.
Yes.
So that in itself, you are already inspiring us, and I thank you for sharing your story. And I wanted to ask you, for the rich mermaids, the mermaids that follow my world, and these are women that they either want to have their own businesses or they already have their own businesses, and coaches, consultants, designers, and a lot of them may have influx of a lot of income, and then it stops. It's not the consistency of a paycheck.
Mhm.
And we rarely talk about the investment part of things. So I want to ask you if you can give us a little investment one-on-one ABC for somebody that has never ever done anything aside of putting their money in a savings account and getting a 0.3%. What would you advise? Where should we start? And also, I want to know, do you think there has to be an X amount of money in the bank or in assets before we get going, or we have to build before we start investing?
Yeah, lots of good questions. So first things first, I would say emergency money, right?
Mhm.
You want to be able to have money that's sitting in a relatively secure place that you can access if things hit the fan in your world, right? Being an entrepreneur, like, money changes each month, right? Sometimes you have more happening than other months, depending on what you do. That's more challenging than somebody who's a paycheck, person who works a 9 to 5 type of job, which no right or wrong on either side. It's just totally different. With somebody who has a specific income that is steady, then it's called dollar cost averaging, taking a certain dollar amount each month and putting it into a retirement account. Fantastic. I think with the folks that are entrepreneurs who have varying incomes that are coming in and out, I would say think about a dollar amount that you know that you're able to do, and maybe go a smaller amount than what you think, because you can always add more later, but do a consistent dollar amount. Maybe that's $50. Maybe that's $100 each month that okay, that's fine. That's not going to hurt me, right? I still have emergency money. I'm still okay paying all my bills. With that money, maybe that is what you earmark for investing into accounts at that point. But I do think the priority, first and foremost, is having emergency money on the sidelines, because that's your first line of defense when things hit the fan in your world. And then really earmarking a dollar amount that you're comfortable with. And again, entrepreneurs, go a smaller amount, because if you have big fluctuating months, then know something, that you're going to be comfortable with, that's not going to hugely impact your day-to-day either. And know that you can always add more and you can always change that. So there's the flexibility with that side of things too. So in addition to that, I think knowing what your risk tolerance is. So are you comfortable with market volatility? Are you not touching this for an extremely long period of time? Are you comfortable with risk? I mean, what does that look like? So these are all important questions. And then going into what's called time horizon. The time horizon is, when do you need this money accessible by? If you are not retiring for 35 years and you're not touching it for 35 years, well, fantastic. That's a long time horizon. If you are needing this money in 6 months, well, that is a different conversation, because that's money that you're going to need very soon. And maybe it doesn't make sense for you to put that into an investment that can go up and down, because that's such a short time horizon. I think the magic really happens when you have time on your side and when you're doing systematic contributions over a long period of time. But again, back to the point, everybody's so different of their risk tolerance, their time horizon, and what their goals are. I think it makes sense to really kind of have that one-on-one conversation. But those are all things, right? Emergency money, knowing what dollar amount comfortably you can invest, and then knowing your risk tolerance, and then your time horizon.
Perfect. That's a good spectrum to at least start being aware. And like you said, if anything, just start setting aside $50 a month
Yes, for
or
sure.
100, and but at least you're being proactive and taking responsibility.
Mhm.
That's very important. And I feel like as we take responsibility, we start building a confidence and self-esteem and worthiness, and we see that we're capable. So then we can add more and more and build on that. So
Yes.
I love how you go back to the baby steps there. And last, I want to ask you about something that I heard you mention, about money infidelities. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so the term could either be money infidelities or financial infidelities. It's kind
Okay.
of one and the same. That could be, and that's also something we talk about on my podcast as well. That could be something that you either witnessed. It could be a business partner that maybe embezzled money. It could be a spouse that, used money on something that you were not aware of or wasn't honest and open. One example is a spouse that basically went out and bought a brand new car with the joint money and didn't have that conversation. So that became an infidelity.
Yes.
It's, really not being impeccable to either yourself or that person about what you're doing with shared finances. And especially when it's impacting someone. I mean, if you own a business with someone else and they're doing all kinds of things with that business's money, then that is not being honest or impeccably honest to you about what's happening with the finances there. And that's whether that's in a business or in a relationship for that matter. I've seen all kinds of things that could be, somebody gambling and not saying anything. That could be back to the alcohol, addiction, spending money on alcohol and not taking care of your family, and your family doesn't know where that money is going. There's a lot of different things. I've even, within my podcast, one of the stories was a gal who, very Sex in the City and Carrie Bradshaw, was basically blowing her entire budget on Christian Louboutin heels and not paying for her rent money.
Oh my
So I
God.
mean, she wasn't being impeccable to herself in that moment. So it can really be definable to, different folks for different reasons. Ultimately, it's not being impeccable with your word when it comes to finances.
Absolutely. And as I hear the examples, I can feel that they are all heartbreaking for whoever is in the middle of that.
For sure.
How do you assist people to heal from that or move forward after money infidelities? How does that look in your world?
Yeah, I think it depends on the situation. I mean,
Mm.
depending on if all assets were gone in a situation like that, then obviously that's a much different conversation. Um, I think a lot of times people will have stories from what they've witnessed from others. Like, hey, my aunt had this happen to her, and here's what I saw, or here's what I witnessed, or I had this happen years ago. I feel like within the podcast, we use it as more of a financial literacy. How can we learn from that and
Oh,
not do that again? Or how can others hear that story and learn from it as well, and know that they could do it different or better moving forward? So I really think that that's more of a learning tool. And obviously, in some situations, it can be very, very tragic and detrimental to the person's finances. So there's a big spectrum there. But I feel like, again, if we can share these stories and be open about that and talk about it, hopefully we can learn about it along the way.
absolutely. Yeah, I was thinking even examples with clients or my own life and how, yeah, what you said, just talking about it. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe we don't have a medicine right now, a solution, a result, but moving the energy of that energy that has been backed up, and maybe has been backed up for 40 years with, like a little knife in
Yeah.
the heart and bad taste in the mouth about something that happened,
Mm-hmm.
and just being able to bring expression to that and be able to share with somebody safe, and maybe even I'm thinking journaling it and just letting it come out to start the healing process and look at it. um, I'm thinking of my own journey, how I had to process certain financial infidelities with friendships, for example. And
Mm-hmm.
um, for example, in my case, when I was in high school, I was in a public school that it was of lower income than the average middle class, and I was seen as somebody that had more than others at that moment. And one of my best friends came with me on a summer holiday that we invited her, and she stole $100 from my little purse.
Oh.
And I remember I was heartbroken.
Mm-hmm.
It was heartbreaking. It wasn't about the money. It was that somebody that I loved so much could do that. And how that in a way at the time, I processed it as I shouldn't have as much. I should cover, and I wasn't even wealthy or anything, but, like almost like I have to step down to be equal with these people so I don't get hurt and so they don't envy me. So how we can even build a whole structure and identity about an infidelity, a pain that happened around money and somebody we loved, and how that can affect us even in our adulthood if we don't work through it. We may be carrying it unconsciously. So when I was thinking of the journaling, I had to journal and get it all out because my anger was so big, and underneath the anger was the sadness. So I had to work with that, and it took me a few years later to be able to process that. And I'm happy that I done that, because if not, I could have maybe to this day, maybe I would have built a full identity on I have to have less so I don't get betrayed. So it's interesting how we can be touched by situations, and the good thing is that we do have the power to rewrite our story, to forgive the situation. I'm not even saying the person, because sometimes it's impossible or very hard, but forgive the situation, which for me, that means accept it. First, come to acceptance. Okay, it is what it is. And then start catering to that little girl that is inside, that is sad, that is frustrated, that feels betrayed, and give her what she needs. And that's the way I have walked my healing journey, and it has helped me. And we can transform the pain into a new identity, into the life we want. That's a great thing. We have that power of rewriting the story.
Yeah,
What do
changing
you
that
think about?
narrative, super powerful. And you can. I mean, once you move through and let things go and learn from them, hopefully, you can change that narrative and move forward.
Absolutely. Well, Jennifer, this was an incredible conversation. I found a lot of value from what you've shared. I'm sure that the women that are listening also are probably taking notes and having big ahas, and maybe even further ahas that will drop in the next few days as the information starts dripping in, and we get some memories and some things that need to be healed, some things that need to be organized in our finances, some phone calls that may have to be made to a financial advisor. So tell us a little bit, if somebody would like to get in touch with you, where can they find you to work on their finances?
So I am all over the place. If you Google Platinum Wealth Management, Jennifer Rogers Markwell, I definitely pop up there. Platinumwealth.net is my website, platinumwealth.net. And then I also, as I shared, have a podcast called Platinum Talks Wealth, where we talk about these money memories and financial infidelities through the podcast as well. So however we can help. One thing that we do as well is we offer a lot of financial literacy. For example, like each month we have a different talk. It's called the virtual coffee chat. And we'll bring on different folks from, all over, experts in trust, legalities, taxes, tax reform, what it looks like for businesses. Upcoming, we have a gentleman who's actually on CNBC. He's an analyst. He's coming on and we're talking about the market and inflation and civil unrest. So we're talking about all of those, things that are happening in our global world right now and how they're affecting investments, the economy, the market in general. So however we can help, we'd be honored to.
Absolutely. Thank you. I've been listening to your podcast the last few days, and after surfing, I would listen to interviews, and I found it very, very interesting and uplifting. And I just want to dive deeper into your podcast. I want to learn all about it. So thank you for sharing your resources.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Such an honor and a treat to chat with you.
You're so welcome. And we talk to you soon, and thanks for being here with us. If you liked what you heard today and you want to learn more, I invite you to check my Instagram account at Mercedes Maidana. If you're interested in creating your rich life, I run a group program called The Rich Mermaids. We are mermaids because we dive deep into ourselves and we resurface stronger than ever. At The Rich Mermaids, you will get the tools to heal your relationship with money and yourself so you can create your rich life. If you're going to be running a business and you're a woman who wants to build lots of wealth, you need to heal your money stories, tap into abundance, and expand your money mindset. Go to my Instagram, send me a DM, and let me know if you want to learn more. Also, let me know if you like this episode. Make sure that you subscribe and share the link with anyone who can find it useful. Did you like the show? Let me know by leaving me a rating on my Spotify show page. Most importantly, remember to love yourself and be super gentle with yourself. That's where abundance resides. Besos, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye bye.